Hello guys, and welcome back for another video. So today I thought I'd do a video for beginner saxophone players, ideally I think for young players, just to help you through those first few weeks, just to get you started on the basics, setting up the instrument without looking at any music at all. So I'm going to give you 5 top tips to get you started in a nice and tidy way. Here we go. Okay, so number 1. Now some of you are going to have a little laugh at this, but number 1 is going to be all about opening the case. Now this might seem a slightly silly topic, but it's actually not. There are lots of different style cases, and it occurred to me, I started a new beginner last week, and straight away, before we'd even got into the case, we had a few little problems just getting into it and making sure it was the right way up. So just be careful, just be conscious of what style of case you've got. Now on this one, I like this kind of case because you can see clearly the clips at the front and whether the case is open or not. So just be careful. Now if there's one thing I've learned over the 20 years of teaching that I've done, is do not presume anything. I've seen it all. I've seen all sorts of problems and mistakes that pupils make. So make sure the case is flat down, make sure you've got it sturdy and the right way up. So don't open it up like that. I've seen loads of pupils do that. You open the case and of course it all falls out. Make sure you don't open the case upside down, of course. Now the case you've got to be really careful of are the zip cases. Now I've fallen for this on an old clarinet case of mine as well. So you've got to be so careful if you've got a zip case that when you pack the instrument up that you remember to put the zips together and don't lift up that case before you've fully zipped it. Now this isn't a saxophone case, of course, this is a clarinet case, but just to show you how deceptive some of these cases can be, you've got zips, you've got 2 sets of zips that go around this case, and notice they've deliberately on this this nice BAM case here, they've put a fluorescent kind of toggles at the front of the case just so that it's a little bit clearer whether the case is closed properly. So just to reiterate, if you've got a zip case, be extra careful whether you've closed it properly when you've finished playing. Okay, so over to tip number 2. Now this has actually got 3 parts to it, so there's going to be a 2A, B and C. So I'm going to go over sling, instrument and mouthpiece. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the sling. Now a fair few different slings on the market. Now this one that I've got, I like this corded type, so there's a corded type and a strap type. Now unfortunately the straps that you get with the instruments, I mean especially Yamaha instruments actually, you get a nice sturdy thick strap with the instrument, but pupils can't actually adjust them very easily, especially young players. If you're under 10, they're a bit of a nightmare to adjust. You get this big bulky plastic sort of clip thing. Now the strap is sturdy, but actually adjusting the clip up and down is really quite difficult. So if you're a young player, you might need to get a strap that suits you, one that you cannot adjust. Now one of the reasons I like this corded type is that the adjustment, it just goes up and down so easily. And you can get this with a hook type on here with a hook connection, or what's called a snap hook, which has got like a spring hook thing so that once you spring it on, it stays clipped. Now this kind of hook, I probably don't recommend this for young players, again under 10, because the instrument comes off the hook without you realizing quite easily, and boom, on the floor before you know it. So now I've got this, it quite suits me because I'm teaching and I'm taking the instrument on and off all day long. So I quite like this for me, but not probably recommended for younger players. Okay, so the reason I said sling instrument mouthpiece is because over the years, again, I don't take anything for granted, I've seen pupils set up their instruments in all sorts of weird and wonderful ways. I think the best way is put your sling on first, hook the instrument onto your sling, and then sort out your mouthpiece and your reed, do that last. Okay, so I'm going to get the instrument out. Here's my sax, and you'll notice there's a place there to hook onto for the sling. So I'm going to hook onto there. I'm going to take this little stop off there. Now that plastic stopper at the top just keeps that joint, just keeps that protected, and also it usually helps just fit the instrument in the case as a snug fit as well, because it's usually designed to fit in there with that on. Okay, so here's the crook. Now just a few words about the crook. So you'll find over time that this can get a little bit sort of green and rusty. Well, not really rusty, but sort of corroded. There's like a natural oxidization of the brass, and if you get any sort of greenish deposits on there, try and clean that off. So make sure it stays clean in there as well. If you want a quick fix for that, you can always just lick a piece of cloth and just rub it around there. So be careful not to force it in there, because this connection really it's a very precise fit, and it needs to, if you're having to really work hard and you're fighting to death with it, then it probably needs cleaning or taking to a technician. So just slide that in there, nice and easy, and you'll notice that that part there goes over that connection there, not underneath it, and that allows that octave key mechanism to just move up and down. Okay, once you've found the right place for that crook, it's usually just to that side a little bit. So the bell sort of usually points off into that direction a little bit, and the crook usually points off into that direction a little bit as well. And then we've got the screw there just to nip up that joint. Now, just a little bit of word about this screw as well. You only need to nip that up just to make it nice and tidy. And when you unscrew it, when you take it apart, just turn it a couple of times. That's all you need. Don't keep unscrewing it till the screw falls out on the floor. It's only just to nip it up, and then just a couple of turns, and that's it. On the other end of the crook, you'll notice it's a cork joint there. Now, of course, as that's a piece of cork, you can just keep that slightly lubricated with a bit of cork grease, just so the mouthpiece slides on easily there. And you'll usually find that the mouthpiece goes down about 3/4 of the way down, and there's usually around about 1 centimetre of cork showing, and that's usually the right place where the saxophone will blow in tune. If you cram the mouthpiece all the way down and you keep doing that all the time, it wears the cork down all the way down, and you just end up playing sharp all the time. So just be careful of that. Okay, so we've got our instrument on the sling. We're now ready to start fiddling with the mouthpiece and the reed. Now, you notice I've got the cap on there, so if you're not using the mouthpiece, always keep that cap on. Just keeps your mouthpiece protected on the tip there. Another thing that's always useful to have is a reed case for your reeds. Now this is a bit more of a posher one, maybe you could say, but even if you just use the simple case that comes with the reeds, you know, just keep them in something. I wouldn't recommend just leaving the reed on the mouthpiece. Now there's a few reasons why. It tends to go mouldy inside the mouthpiece, and brown and gooey, and really quite hideous and disgusting. So don't leave the reed on there. And also it tends to crinkle up on the end of the reed, so you go back to play it and it just doesn't sort of work very well. So when you finish playing, give your reed a little wipe with a piece of cloth or something like that, or even just sort of wipe it across your knee or something. Slot it back into its case and let it sort of dry out properly. So I'm going to take my reed out, and we're going to moisten up half of that reed, so not just the tip, but all the way down that area where it's been scraped off. So half of the reed. Pupils don't often like the taste of new reeds, but you get used to it. It tastes a little bit sort of woody when they're brand new, but it's okay. Okay, so now this is the tricky part. So we've got to get this reed on here in a tidy way without damaging the tip of the reed. Now, you can see how thin the top of that is. I mean, it really is absolutely wafer thin. And also, the beginner reeds, if you've started off, say, perhaps on a 1.5, you'll find that the beginner reeds are even thinner. This is a strength 2, actually. So you've got to be really careful. So the object of the exercise is to try and get this reed clamped up on here without touching the thin part at the top, okay? Just put that reed flat down on there, line it up. I tend to get pupils to hold it up to their eye line like that, straight in front of their eyes. Get the reed dead level with the top of the mouthpiece. Hold that with your thumb, and then pop that ligature down on top. Now just, you've got to be careful you don't, using this method, you've got to be careful that you don't stab the reed with that sharp edge of that ligature, because they're not exactly sort of rounded off very nicely, so they're quite sharp. So just get that down on there. Now try and get the ligature towards the bottom part of the reed, so not halfway up. So keep the ligature on the thick part of the reed, ideally right near the bottom of the reed. And then again, just hold that up, make sure you've got your reed level with the top of the mouthpiece, and then you can perhaps hold that in place with one thumb and then use your other thumb to just sort of nip that up. Okay, so just a quick word on the mouthpieces. Now, one of the annoying things about buying an instrument is they cut the cost to try and be competitive on the price of the instrument. They give you a duff mouthpiece with the instrument. Now this really is a shame, because there's nothing worse than starting out on an instrument and you're struggling to get a sound out of it, struggling to work. The saxophone is notorious for being slightly temperamental, quite difficult to work, and cheaper instruments just don't tend to work very well. This particular one, this is actually a student instrument. This is a Yamaha one, the Yamaha 280. Straight out of the box, these are quite nice to play, I would say. And the other bonus is that you get a Yamaha mouthpiece with it, of course. And these are good starter mouthpieces. Now you probably get a 4C with it, something like that. Now if you've got a different brand of saxophone, it may be worth getting a Yamaha mouthpiece to go with that instrument. I would say that the Yamaha 4C is a good starter mouthpiece to get going on. The other thing I would say about that mouthpiece is that don't stay on it too long. The amount of pupils that I get at a more senior level that come in perhaps at year 9 or 10 or something like that, and they're perhaps grade 4 or 5 standard, and they're still playing on the Yamaha 4C. Now that really is a beginner mouthpiece, and I would recommend perhaps after a year, if you're getting on with the instruments and you're doing quite well, just upgrade that to the 5C, which has got a slightly better, slightly bigger tip opening, slightly different design, and you'll get a bit more of a fuller sound, and it'll just sort of keep you tested, and it'll give you a bit more quality of sound. And actually, even then, or you could jump straight from the 4C to the 6C. Now I've actually started beginners off on 6C, and they do fine on it. Now the 6C, it's a bit more of an open mouthpiece. With a strength 2 reed and a 6C mouthpiece, you can actually make a very good semi-professional sound, and you could play easily up to grade 8 sort of pieces on it. It really is a cracking sort of cheapish mouthpiece. So as I say, 4C, great mouthpiece for a starter, but don't stay on it too long. Okay, so over to tip number 3. That was a bit of a lengthy one, that one, number 2, so this one won't be quite as long. So I've pushed the mouthpiece down onto the cork. I've got about 1 centimetre of cork showing still there. I know that's going to be roughly where it's going to play in tune. Let's talk a little bit about the finger positions now. So I like to tell the pupils about the thumbs and the fingers. So thumb, thumb, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let me explain that a little bit further. So on the right hand, we've got the black thumb rest there, so thumb underneath there. And then for the left hand thumb, you've got the black button there. Actually, on some instruments, it's not a black button, but 9 out of 10 of them it is. So, some of them it's gold, but so black button there, black thumb rest there, and then we've got the fingers down there. Okay, so, and also on some instruments, this button up here isn't a white button or like a pearl button. On some of them, it's a gold key again. So we're going to miss out that first button there, and then we've got one finger down on the B there, and then we're going to miss out the little button just underneath that and go for the next one. So we've missed the top one and we've missed the third one, and then we've got that one next to the other one. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3. Now just be careful as you're finding the buttons and you're getting used to the instrument. Be careful you're not scraping your reed on your shirt. See that all the time. Lower down the instrument's a little bit more obvious. 3 buttons, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and that leaves your little finger free to sort of work those keys, and little finger should be free to sort of work those keys. So ignore those keys for the moment. We're not going to use those for a fair while yet. Now the thumbs really do play an important part here in stabilising the instrument. I think this is often really overlooked. Now it's a bit like flute players. Now flute players use their thumbs up here on the instrument to stabilise the instrument that way when they're playing the instrument. It's exactly the same thing on saxophone. So you've got your thumb there. Now between those two thumbs it really does stabilise the instrument and stop it wobbling around all over the place, because although the weight of the instrument is taken on the sling, that doesn't really do much to help keep the instrument under control. So just to summarise there, finger positions, we've got the thumb, and then the 1, 2, 3, and then the 1, 2, 3. And remember to miss out that top key there, and to miss out that little button there, and then you're on the right road. Okay, over to step number 4. I'm going to show you a basic lip and teeth grip. So I'm going to shape my bottom lip over my bottom teeth here like this, and then I'm going to just smile a little bit so that that bottom lip stretches out, and I've got this firm area, this firm surface of the bottom lip, so that I can press on the reed to make that work. And then I'm going to put my top teeth down on that patch so that the instrument is stable and the grip is stable, so it doesn't fly around all over the place. And you'll notice as well, I've got a mouthpiece patch on there. Now I think for a saxophone, that's a really good idea. I use it on clarinet as well, but even more so on saxophone. It's quite a loud instrument. It's got quite a buzz to it, and I personally just cannot stand all those vibrations sort of going directly through my top teeth. I just hate it. So I always play with a mouthpiece patch on there, and it helps you just sort of get the feel of where to put your grip and just gets you used to where to grip on the mouthpiece. Let's just have a little chat about how much mouthpiece you put in your mouth as well. Now, I think the rough guide that I tell pupils on this one is if you were to divide that mouthpiece, that top area there, into 3, I would say your teeth go about 1/3 of the way up, and which means that your lip, when you're covering the mouthpiece, you'll probably cover about half of the mouthpiece, but your teeth will be 1/3 of the way up, so your teeth won't be halfway down the mouthpiece. So let me just show you that. So bottom lip, teeth down, then we're ready to go. So I'll just show you that again in slow motion. So bottom lip stretched onto the bottom teeth. Notice I've got a little bit of a smile, sort of the corners are coming up. The other important thing to remember is try to think about streamlining the air down the instrument. So if you can look at the gap there between the mouthpiece and the reed, it's rather thin. So think about really sort of almost like you're kind of playing flute or something. So really streamline the air really thin, and try to avoid puffing your cheeks out when you're trying to get that sound down the instrument. So just concentrate on getting the shape of the grip really accurate and just working your way into the sound and really streamlining the air through the instrument so you get a nice, steady, quiet sound, and what's more, a really stable sound. That's what you're really after, one that's not shaky and wobbly. So I'll just go over that again. So bottom lip, teeth down, so I would recommend, I know we went over those different finger positions down there, so I recommend just put that first finger down. So you've got a thumb and a first finger. That will give you a bit of a hold with the right hand, and then you've got the balancing with the right hand thumb. So that gives you something to just grip onto a little bit, and then just try and get that note out as your first note, which is a B. So I'll go over that one more time. So bottom lip, teeth down. I'll just check where my teeth are. Yeah, I would say my teeth are 1/3 of the way up that mouthpiece. And then I'll close up the rest of the mouth just to seal around there so we don't get air escaping out the sides. And then try to avoid. So if you puff out the cheeks, the tendency is then the whole grip is a bit too loose and it's all a bit uncontrolled, so you'll get a bit of a wilder sound. So keep it really streamlined. So if you've got that working nicely and you've got a nice steady B and it's not sort of wobbling around all over the place, then super, well done. So the next stage, I think, if you've got a nice steady B and you've got that note going, take the mouth off and then go back on again. See if you can find that same place and find the same grip, and just keep kind of going on and off the mouthpiece and just really get used to the feel. Because often when pupils are just starting out, it's a bit hit and miss and a bit lucky whether they get the right sort of grip or not. So if you get that sound, well done, and have another go and keep going back on and off the mouthpiece. Just be careful, as I say, try not to put all your air in there and try as hard. I know you want to try as hard as you can, but don't puff all your air in there with your cheeks out, because you'll find you'll get dizzy quite easy and it can make you feel, in some cases, a bit unwell. So try and avoid that. Okay, so step 5, and finally, so I'm going to show you a little warm-up to do with the instrument once you've got that one note going. So we're going to go through the left-hand notes and we're going to practice starting and stopping the sound, taking the tongue on and off the reed. Now I think this is really important to get going on your very first lesson. Don't leave it to something more advanced later on. You really need, as a beginner, you really need to get the idea that you're going to take one breath and then use the tongue to start and stop the sound. So regulate the starting and stopping the sound using the tongue on and off the reed. Now that, I think, is absolutely critical. It's not something you can leave till later on. You've got to really get the hang of that straight away. Now I would say 9 out of 10 pupils that I teach, as we're approaching the end of that first lesson, I nearly always get them to just get the hang of getting that first note out, and then to practice just using the tongue on and off the reed, just like a kind of like a switch, I would say. So we'll get that note going. And then just practice putting the tongue on the reed to cut off that sound. Now try to get a definite cut-off point there. So not sort of, don't let the notes sort of die away. You're trying to get ba, so a really clear stop to the sound. And then once you've done that, and then start the sound again and stop the sound, and you should end up with something like this. So the important thing to recognise there is that I've only taken one breath, but I've used the tongue to start and stop the sound. So you've got lots of notes, but all in one breath. Okay, so let's go over to my music room and we'll have just another little look at the posture and how to stand and hold the instrument. And we'll practice those left-hand notes, starting and stopping the sound. And maybe we'll do some slurring as well, so more smooth playing. See you in a second. Okay, and on to the last part of the video. So once you've got that B sounding pretty clear and you've got a nice stable sound, so if you've got that over, say, 5 seconds, then you can practice starting and stopping the sound, taking the tongue on and off the reed. And that just gets you used to the idea of using the tongue to start and stop the sound instead of the air. Okay, so the air must be in place and ready to go through the instrument all the time. So a bit like if you've got I always say to pupils, if you've got the tap full on at the sink, if you've got the cold tap on and you've got your thumb over it and there's no water coming out, that water pressure is there all the time trying to get through. And it's a bit like here, so the air pressure should be trying to get through the instrument all the time, and you're just using the tongue to stop and start that air pressure going through the instrument. Okay, so once you've got that idea of starting and stopping the sound, then move on to playing a few more notes around the instrument. So you could move from B, and then you could go down to put another finger down to the A. And then do the same thing with the G, 3 fingers down. So try not to rush those notes so think of it as da. So try to do a few seconds of notes, few seconds of silence, few seconds of note, few seconds of silence. So don't rush that, because that will start to promote you'll start to kind of blow the notes instead of kind of tongue the notes. And then maybe go from G, A, B, and then we'll try a C with the middle finger. Okay, once you're happy with that and you're starting and stopping those notes really clearly, then I would move on to playing a bit more continuously, but still tonguing the notes. Now I think this is the next step on. This is quite tricky. So I would start from the C, and I would play C, B, A, G, A, B, C. So I would play that continuously, but also tongue the notes as well. And I think this is quite tricky. So we'd go so notice I'm tonguing the notes separately, so I'm still tonguing those notes, but I'm not actually stopping the air. So I'm blowing continuously and playing continuously, but just synchronizing the finger movement with the tongue on the reed. So I'll just show that one more time. So that's a really important thing to get right. So just be able to play continuously, but still tongue the notes. And if that's going well, then you could just work on that tonguing a little bit more and try some more tonguing, get more notes out of the one breath. So you could just double the amount of notes that you play and play 2 notes instead of 1. So that's well worth doing. And then if that's going really well, then I think just the icing on the cake would be to have a go at some legato playing, some really smooth playing. So we could try those notes. Just tongue the first note as you come in, and then have a go at just smoothly playing the other notes without using any tonguing on the reed. So you would play. And that's really good practice. So if you can practice the difference there between the tonguing and the slurring, the smooth playing and the detached playing, that really will help you. And if you get that right, you're off. You can fly through the music, and then you can start to look at the music and work your way through your first book. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have found it useful, then please click on that subscribe button, give that bell a smash, and you'll receive notifications for future videos coming out. See you soon. Bye.